Fall 2012. Archaeologists found a solitary tomb on Tibet's remote Qiangtang, no man's land, unmarked steel, wet soil. Herders swore a self-buried ascetic, a century ago, lay there, warning the coffin hates movement. They insisted on opening it. They couldn't lift the thin coffin. Ropes snapped again. Later, everyone who touched the coffin got sudden hate. Nearly impossible for long acclimatized team members. That night, every camp compass spun counterclockwise. Steady? The radio auto-played ancient chants. At last, on coffin base, my body seals wind and snow here. Descendants, don't disturb. Oddly, after the squad withdrew, the lone grave vanished, leaving only an unmoving deep. Late autumn 2012. A 7-member team of geologists and archaeologists pushed deep into Tibet's Qiangtang no man's land, along its eastern fringe. Their objective was to survey a fissure zone left by ancient geological activity. The plateau sky was high and azure, the sun intense, but the wind already carried a blade-like chill. At the edge of a sheltered hollow, Mapper Shout Lin slipped, knocked away loose gravel, and revealed a differently colored soil layer underneath right below. It was a solitary grave. No prayer flags, no money cairn, no sign at all. Just rough blue stones loosely circling it, and a slight mound of windblown earth, nearly level with the ground. It would have been impossible to find if not by chance. The soil was dark in color, completely different from the surrounding dry sand. To the touch, it was damp and cold, which was highly unusual on the edge of the extremely arid high-altitude permafrost. The strangest thing was a crooked, broken stone tablet. Its surface was severely weathered, with faint traces of carving, but no discernible words or patterns could be made out. The team's Tibetan guide, Dorya, turned pale the moment he saw the tomb. He immediately took off his hat, put his hands together, and whispered a few chants with an expression of unprecedented seriousness and reverence. Faced with the team's puzzled questions, Dorya hesitated before explaining in broken Mandarin mixed with Tibetan. It was a story passed down from his great-grandfather's generation, that a Bobagalo, meaning a Turton or a guardian of hidden treasures, was buried in the depression. It was not an ordinary death, but a voluntary burial, using one's body as a force to suppress something restless in this land. Dorya stressed the elder's warning. The coffin doesn't want moving and must not be disturbed. Move it, and storms will come, and people will fall sick too. Science trumped village tales. Leader Professor Chen, a firm materialist, thought it an ancient burial layout worth study. The odd wet soil likely simply came from unusual local underground water patterns. Despite Dorja's fierce opposition, the team chose limited clearing and probing, to at least date the tomb owner roughly first. Next morning, after a simple rite to calm Dorya, they began carefully clearing topsoil. The layer of soil was not thick, and soon, a coffin was revealed. Unexpectedly, the coffin was not as heavy as imagined. It was made of thin material, seemingly some kind of local white wood, unpainted and unadorned, exuding a crude and rustic aura. It scarcely fit the guardian legend at all. The seam between the lid and coffin body was nearly clogged with soil and time sediment, sealed tight. To probe further, opening the coffin was inevitable. Dorya had withdrawn far away, back to the pit, chanting steadily. They found sturdy climbing rope, chose the safest method, and planned to lift the coffin from pit, then deal with it. 8 teammates stood around, ropes secured. At Professor Chen's command they hauled together, yet the coffin wouldn't budge. It wasn't just heavy, it was anchored, as if it weren't a wooden container, but was welded to the earth, fused as one with the permafrost. The team members looked at each other, then tried again with more force. The ropes creaked under the strain, and their faces flushed with exertion, digging shallow pits into the hard permafrost under their feet. 1, 2, 3, lift! Snap! A crisp crack. Not the coffin shifting, but a thumb-thick climbing rope suddenly snapped inside. The break was eerily clean, as if a keen blade sliced it in an instant. Immediately after, another rope snapped abruptly. A corner of the heavy coffin slammed back into the pit with a dull thud. The scene fell silent, with only the highland wind whistling past. An indescribable chill, not from the temperature, crept up everyone's spine. Some who handled the ropes directly, especially those who touched the coffin, suddenly began feeling strangely off. Dizziness and shortness of breath, then chest tightness, followed by coughing. Within 2 hours, 3 worsened fast, breathing pink frothy sputum. Their faces turned blue, classic signs of high-altitude pulmonary edema in these patients. Strangely, all were seasoned plateau workers, well acclimated. By any logic, none should have suddenly suffered such a serious illness at this altitude. It made no sense. The camp was instantly thrown into chaos and panic. Dorya helped move the patients into the hyperbaric oxygen chamber as quickly as possible, but his eyes were filled with a fear that said, "I knew it." Aid first. Coffin opening fully put off. Night fell. The plateau's starry sky was so brilliant it was almost terrifying. The shaken team members gathered in the tent, none of them in the mood to sleep. Xiao Li, guarding the gear, glanced at the geological compass and suddenly let out a scream. The needle that should point steadily north now turned counterclockwise, slow and constant, still drifting without stopping, alone. He hurriedly pulled out spares, even a south-pointing needle. Without exception, everyone behaved the same. Then, the old transistor radio used for weather forecasts began to crackle with static, even though it was turned off. Amidst the electrical noise, a low, steady, and repetitive male chant slowly emerged. It was an ancient Tibetan scripture, with strange syllables and a desolate melody that pierced through the tents in the dead of night, pounding on everyone's eardrums and hearts. No one dared to turn off the radio. The chanting continued for about 15 minutes before fading into silence after a long, final note. At once, every compass returned to normal. Professor Chen's faith then began to falter. Next morning, the patient stabilized, but evacuation couldn't wait. Before ordering it, he did one last thing to ensure success. He went down to the edge of the pit alone, as no one else dared to follow. With a small brush and a flashlight, he carefully inspected the strange coffin one last time, especially the seam between the lid and the body. On the side of the coffin's bottom, in a very inconspicuous spot half covered by dirt, his fingertips felt a slight indentation. Carefully brushing loose soil, his flashlight glow revealed a Tibetan script line. The strokes were deep but small, as if scratched out bit by bit with a fingernail or a simple iron tool. He knew no Tibetan, but memorized character shapes. After returning to the temporary camp where there was a signal, he immediately copied the characters and sent them to a Tibetan studies expert he knew. The reply came quickly. A translation. "I anchor this place's wind and snow. Later generations don't intrude." The signature was a blurry Dharma name. Experts said it came from an ancient minor sect, long forgotten. Its cultivation methods were rumored ultra-secret. The expedition team quickly and completely evacuated the depression. All the collected samples and photographic data were subsequently destroyed or mysteriously corrupted by various accidents in the following days. A month later, a better-equipped team composed of skeptical logistics personnel was ordered to return to the site, intending to at least place a geographical coordinate marker. They reached the coordinates. The hollow remained, wind-scarred as before, yet the lone mound, the unliftable thin coffin, the soggy earth, and the half-blank stele had vanished completely. All that remained at the site was a clear, cold spring, flowing quietly in the sub-zero temperature without a hint of ice. The water's surface reflected the timeless sky of Qiangtang, deep and cold, like an eye staring at the